We have a YouTube channel. It's called Connected Tempe.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you can't find it, I'll send you the link.
Okay.
So, okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Ready? Okay, it's October 21st, 2021. We're at the Pyle Center with Arlene Chin. I'm Michelle Hirsch, and we will start with the beginning, at least the beginning for you.
Sure.
When and where were you born?
I was born in San Francisco, California in 1965.
And how about your parents? When
My
and where were they
parents
born?
emigrated from China. My dad was from a village called Suinan, which is water south, Suinan. And it's a part of Guangdong province. So he came from what I described as National Geographic China, what you saw on TV and in the magazines of rice paddies, water buffaloes, very rural in area. My mother was born in Shanghai, China, and that she was from a cosmopolitan city. So they were from two different worlds, and they met in San Francisco.
Oh, okay. And do you have siblings?
None surviving.
Mm-hmm.
I had a half brother who passed away when I was 12.
And what prompted either your parents to move here or you to move here? Did you move here with your parents?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We moved to Tempe when I was 9, so about 1974-ish. And it was for business. My dad ran a grocery store on his own in San Francisco, a little neighborhood corner grocery store. And they were ready for a change. They came to Arizona. First, it was in Phoenix for just a few months, and they were in a partnership on a restaurant. But then that changed, that dissolved, and they opened a restaurant in Tempe.
What was the name of the restaurant?
The name of the restaurant was How How, Howhow, which in Chinese means good, good. And it was on the corner of University and Rural. So there's a taco shop there right now.
How long was the restaurant there?
Ooh, good question. I haven't done the math, but I want to say an approximate would be, I was 9, about 4 or 5 years.
So did you ever have a chance to work there?
Did I ever have a chance to work there? Like I had a choice.
Right.
I was the restaurant kid. So you'll see in some Chinese restaurants, family run, you're going to see a kid in the corner doing their homework. Actually, we're adjacent to the library. One of the best things for me was when I was able to check out a stack of books. That kept me company at the restaurant. I did work there. I bussed tables, washed dishes, did the cash register. I prepped food. So it was a family business. So I did everything. Took out the garbage, all of that.
What schools did you go to in Tempe? Yeah.
I went to, when we moved to Tempe, the Kyrene School District was booming. It was 1974. So we moved into the Hallcraft Home subdivision, and my elementary school wasn't built yet. So I started at Wagner, and then they moved us to the site of what was Kyrene Junior High on Kyrene and Warner-ish, where the district offices are now. And from there, and they were building the schools. So eventually, I went back to our home school, which was Kyrene del Norte in my neighborhood. And it was brand new.
Fun.
Oh, and then you said other schools. So then I went to Kyrene Junior High, and then Corona del Sol, and then ASU. All the great public schools in the city.
Did you have any favorite teachers at Norte or Corona
All
that
of
you
them.
remember?
Yes, I can name several. Miss Harmon, Miss Barton, Miss Kirkpatrick, Miss Shank was our 6th grade teacher. I had a lot of great memories. I often wonder where, where they went. And in junior high, Mrs. Robertson, Mr. Plasek, then at Corona, absolutely. I still keep in touch with several of my teachers. They were mentors to me. Jim Denton, Gail Fisher, who I still see. She and her husband Mel are involved. Linda Parrish, great people that have influenced me. We lost a few. Dr. Jim McBride, he was fantastic, and Coach Campbell, Larry Campbell, right?
Yeah, I went to school with his daughter, Lori.
Yeah.
Did you have some favorite classes, or what maybe inspired you to go on to ASU?
Well, I was a first generation college student, and my parents really didn't tell me I had an option not to go to college. So I had original thoughts about going out of state. I actually thought about going to UCLA. But I didn't know anything about the process. And also that was sort of I don't even want to call it a dream. It was a thought of, ooh, UCLA, it seems like a great place. I thought I'd try it. I'm gonna cough really quick.
Yeah, that's okay. Take any breaks you want for something to drink.
Okay. From Corona del Sol to ASU, it became the right choice, and really the only choice for me because of affordability, access. My parents really couldn't advise me because of my first generation to college status. So a lot of my peers that were a year or two ahead of me. Sorry.
That's okay.
A few of my peers from Corona, Julie Warford was one of them. She helped me out with my freshman schedule. It was horrible. I had classes and I had an hour in between each one in my first semester. But they helped guide me. They held my hand through the process, and
Just
they were
where to
wonderful.
go and
Absolutely.
feeling comfortable. And what did you study at ASU or major in?
I ended up majoring in human communication. I started in a major that wasn't the right fit, and I had a great advisor, other friends, actually a friend who graduated from Tempe High, and I met at ASU, Marlene Ong, another great family in Tempe. She was a comm major, and she talked to me, over those late night study sessions, and I wasn't feeling right in my major and having that mid-teen crisis or whatever they call that. And she talked to me, and I set up appointments with the advisors, and she really helped guide me to the right major. And once I landed in it, I used to tell students that when you're in the right major, the clouds part, the birds sing, the sun shines when you found your place. And it was great. I loved the study of what I chose. It was interesting, and I've been able to apply the knowledge in my career.
Did you live on campus or did you live at home?
No, I lived at home. First gen, cost was an issue, and I at that point was an only child, so it was good for my parents to have me there with them.
Did you drive around? Did you bike to school?
Drove. Actually, I drove with a bike in the back of the pickup truck so that I can ride to class.
Get around campus.
Parked in lot 59.
Yeah.
And rode into class.
Did you have any jobs in high school or college that you want to share what you did? And
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, besides working in the family restaurant,
Right.
I worked in my aunt's restaurant when she owned China Lil, which is now the site of AZ88. So I worked in that building for a bit in high school. But then you grow tired of the restaurant business. If you've worked in the family restaurant business, it is a commitment. I worked for, and a lot of other teenagers worked for, Walker Research,
Yeah.
a market research company
Yeah.
in Tempe, over in the Lakes Plaza area. And I did that for a bit. And then in college, I worked for a Pasta Plus Deli and Catering. And through that job, I ended up getting to know Robin and Bob Tricks,
Oh,
because
House of
they
Tricks.
worked for Bandersnatch, the brew pub at that time, and they also catered and did some things, and so they were hired on at some point on a catering gig or two, and I got to know them. So I've known them for a while also.
Yeah, lots of ties to the community.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
How did you and your family spend? I mean, they were entrepreneurs and running a restaurant, so this might seem like a silly question, but was there leisure time? How did you guys spend any leisure time, or did you have any family traditions or celebrations, or anything particularly that you enjoyed doing in Tempe?
That's a great question. And you predicted the answer. They ran their restaurant, so there was very little leisure time, but that's an important thing for people to know,
Mhm.
right? So we left San Francisco, where my dad immigrated at the age of 15, so he grew up in San Francisco. My mom and dad met in San Francisco, but she came to San Francisco from New York, Shanghai, Hong Kong, New York, San Francisco. They had built a wonderful network. We had relatives, blood relatives, not just friend relatives, in San Francisco. They left all of that when they moved here. They met and had, built a friend group where they socialized. But really, we developed our own community. I tell people, right, I came to Tempe as a 9-year-old after leaving everybody I knew, but I quickly found community here. And now it becomes a 2 degrees of separation from anyone. We've shared that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Leisure time, well, at the time, there weren't very many markets that had Asian groceries, right? That for Asian cooking. And a couple of times a year, my mom, dad, and I would take road trips to LA or back to San Francisco to visit friends and relatives, but they would load up the car with ingredients that my mom had to have for her cooking.
Fun, yeah. I want to back up a little bit to high school and maybe college.
Sure.
Were you involved in sports or extracurricular activities?
Yes, I was. At Corona, I was involved in student council. That's where Larry Campbell became really a significant mentor to me, and Jim Denton also. I was also on the softball team, the 1982 state championship, AA state
Yay.
championship softball team. And those are memories that you never forget. I still keep in touch with several people I went to school with and played softball with. But also it taught me a lot about teamwork and building relationships and the importance of that camaraderie.
Yeah, fun. So you graduated from ASU,
Yes.
and what did you do next? Did you go right to work somewhere?
What did I do? I mean, it was just a few months ago, right? I worked, but not in any significant job. So while I was a junior at ASU, I went on a summer study abroad, a summer study trip to Taiwan.
Ooh.
And it wasn't an ASU program, but it was a program that was intended to help Chinese American students get reacquainted with the Chinese culture. So in order to qualify for the program, you had to be at least 1/2 Chinese. right? Yeah, check, double, double. And you applied and you were accepted, and I spent the summer in Taiwan. This was the junior year in college, sophomore, junior year. And I went, and it was incredible. For the first time in my life, I had Chinese American friends that weren't friends of the family and weren't relatives. So they were my own that I met. And for someone who was a transplant from San Francisco, where the Asian population is significantly higher than Tempe, Arizona was at the time, it was significant for me in my own personal development also, that you could see and you met people and you were validated in, oh, I'm not the minority.
Yeah.
Right? It was a time of growth and self-analysis, self-learning. It was a really great experience. So I did that. So that left an impact on me, and I met all these people from all over the US and some were from Canada and Europe. So as I graduated, I had a friend who was on an internship in Taiwan, and some other friends who had gone through and then went back to teach English in Taiwan. And at that time, I thought I would go into international business, whatever that meant to 21-year-old me, right? And I thought, well, going to Taiwan would be helpful. It was emerging as one of the, I think they called it the Seven Tigers, it really on an upward trend in economic development. So I thought, okay, I'll go there and make some connections. And what I learned was that I loved working with people and teaching and helping them to grow. That was my big aha. And when I was there, I taught English one-on-one in tutoring sessions, but also small classes also. And the age ranged from younger kindergarten students to adults and some retirees. So it was fascinating, and I fell in love with that personal development track. And I came back to the US after several months, 6 months, I think it was. And I went to work for a corporation, for the Gap. And I gravitated towards training and development. I was in management, but I always was the one that was able to work with training new people. It was the education, right? That's what slowly was sinking in. And I worked for the Gap for about 5 years in the Valley, and at Paradise Valley Mall, Fiesta Mall, and then we would rotate and help out at other stores. But then I saw an opportunity at ASU in the Alumni Association. I applied, and I got it, and I was with ASU for 23 years until I left to go work for the ASU Foundation.
And for those that don't know, what does the ASU Foundation do?
ASU Foundation is a separate nonprofit, a private nonprofit that exists to support Arizona State University. We fundraise for students, for faculty, for capital projects.
Okay. And so you have also done some work in, and you correct me if I'm wrong,
Sure.
Helping students get scholarships. And so tell us a little bit about that.
So in a few of my different roles at ASU, I have worked in outreach and admissions, in financial aid and scholarships. I'm currently the Senior Director of Scholarship Advancement for the ASU Foundation. So what that means is I manage a portfolio of scholarships, and we have several programs that are managed that have student cohorts by the ASU Foundation. I work with our different academic units to consult and work on their teams to help them develop their scholarship structures or advise in some way. prior to that, and in my experience at ASU, one of the significant jobs that also is tied to Tempe is I worked in access and outreach. I worked in a role where my primary job was to help the schools in the Tempe Union High School District help the students with options post high school graduation. Ideally, they would come to ASU, but that wasn't the primary goal. It was the rising tide. How do we help more students be prepared, and their families be prepared for a 4-year university experience or a 2-year college experience, or how do they have the choice at that point at graduation? And I worked with all of the schools as well as other populations. I worked with the Native American outreach coordinator within the district, Valerie Molina. I worked with her on programs for parents specifically, so that in the population as far and wide as it is in the district, that you have first generation college students, but you also have students that have a legacy of going to college. Well, they have questions also, and I would work with each segment of the populations in the college process, whether it was application or preparedness prior to their senior year, or navigating the financial aid process.
And that is quite an impact of all the students that you have been able to touch their lives, impact their lives, give them and their families information to continue their education. It's just a huge impact.
I will tell you, that's probably been the highlight of my career thus far. I love everything I do. I love what I do now. But in terms of impact, I was heavily impacted by that also, because it's funny as an adult when you look back at your job, whatever you hold now, and then, well, how did I get here? Well, gosh, the fact that I was a first generation college student and struggled to find my way, it's no accident that I ended up in that role of helping other students get through. And in Tempe, I have easily helped thousands of students and families.
Yeah.
But the impact has been on me also, so rewarding to do that.
Well, and it is a domino, because when you are able to help people, it helps you back, and then also they go on to be able to inform and help other people. So
right?
It's a wonderful domino effect. Let's talk a little bit about neighborhoods. Let's see, you talked about growing up in the Hallcraft neighborhood. So that's near
85283.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. And what other neighborhoods in Tempe have you lived in, and where do you live now?
I live in 85282 now. I've lived in 85283. I've lived in 85281. I went to school in 85284. I work in technically 85280. So I've hit all of them, all of the neighborhoods, and there's been a piece of every zip code in my life.
Are there some significant changes from either when you arrived here or when you were going to high school and college that you want to mention? You know, whether it's changes in stores you used to go to or places you would visit, changes that you've seen in the neighborhoods.
Sure, the names of stores have changed, the restaurants have changed, a lot has changed. I mean, and that in Tempe has grown. But I will tell you what's significant is not the change, but what remains the same to me. And that's the sense of community. I love Tempe for the fact that it has always felt like a small town. We don't operate like a small town. We are a significant cosmopolitan destination. We're globally known. But I feel like when I go to Trader Joe's, I will run into a friend. When I go to Costco, I will run into a friend. When I go to Target, the Gemco Target, I will run into people I know. And it's fun. And whenever you meet people for the first time, and they live in Tempe or lived in Tempe or grew up in Tempe, it's always the game of, well, where did you live? What school did you attend? And do you know? And invariably, you connect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a neat feeling
Mm-hmm.
to have that connection. And it's one of my favorite things about Tempe.
Yeah, yeah. Would you say that the political events of the time impacted your education or work or life in Tempe?
So the question is, previously,
Mm-hmm.
historically,
Mm-hmm.
well, I guess as a young person, you may not be as aware
Mm-hmm.
of the role of politics and how it shapes things. Uh, Looking back, probably, but at that time, unaffected. You just go about and you live and ride your bike to different places in Tempe. So that's a hard question. I'm not sure if I'm answering it.
Well, and it's good. I was just going to lead to what prompted your interest in first being appointed. So you had to apply to be appointed to City Council and Tempe City Council. And what year was that?
May 2019
Okay.
was when I began service. So it started in April, the application.
So what prompted your interest to apply and then you were appointed?
Right. I grew up here. I have benefited from the leadership and the work of so many people before me. I can take up a lot of time just naming names of those people. I was involved early on in the Mayor's Youth Advisory Commission when Harry Mitchell was mayor, and he's a mentor to me. I have taken leadership classes at ASU taught by Neil Giuliano, another mentor to me and great friends now. I was shaped by all of that. And another cultural expectation, or a cultural norm, I should say, in Tempe is involvement. We make it easy and inviting, or I felt that way all of my life from my age 16, right, being involved in the Mayor's Youth Advisory Commission to now, that, well, yeah, we should get involved and that's what we should do. So when the opportunity presented itself for the appointment and to serve, well, I applied, as did 49 other people, which I will tell you my reaction to that was 50 people applied. That's Tempe.
Yeah.
That's people willing to step up
Mm-hmm.
and serve.
Mm-hmm.
I was so proud of Tempeans. And so I was quite honored to be selected in that process. The other two finalists are people that I absolutely respect and admire. It was Dr. Shireen Lerner and Don Casano. So, wow, to be in their company was quite an honor.
And how was that experience? Was that a 2-year experience? How long was the appointment?
14 months.
Okay.
The appointment was
Mm-hmm.
14 months.
And how was that experience? Did you learn something? Was it what you expected? Was it not what you expected?
I learned so much. And I didn't go in with any preconceived expectations. I went in, and to be quite honest, it was a tumultuous time. And I went in and I knew that my role was to show up, be involved, participate, do the work, ask the questions, go through my packets, ask staff the questions, shape things as they come forward for the vote. And I did. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the service. And I felt like I could contribute, which is why I'm running now. I feel like having gone through those 14 months, I'm ready to hit the ground running. I know how I will serve now. What I'll do, it's a shorter orientation for me.
And campaigning is a whole other situation than actually serving.
Right.
So what has that been like? How long have you been campaigning, and maybe what are you getting out of that, or what are you learning from that?
That's a fun question, and you're absolutely right. Simply serving, or not simply, but serving is very different from campaigning. I've enjoyed it. So, a big part of campaigning is canvassing. You're going to neighborhoods, you're going door by door. And I joke that, wow, all those years of trick or treating really taught me how to do this, right? So, it's been fantastic. I've enjoyed it because I've gotten to meet people on their doorstep and have had great conversations, really listening and meeting people. And we've got some really cool neighborhoods in Tempe. And at door level, you see some great houses and cool doors, but you know, people are more open to talking to you. You go to them, and I've loved it.
That's great. Um, and the election is March 2022.
Correct.
So good luck.
Thank you.
That.
Thank you.
I don't know how many people are running, but I know you're running for one of the seats. So
right.
Good luck with that. Now, some of your preparation has been and experience has been with things like Tempe Sister Cities and Tempe Leadership. Do you want to share a little bit about your time with those organizations?
For the last 40 years, I've been involved in something, whether it's Tempe Leadership, one of the boards or commission. I was chair of the Human Relations Commission, which was an incredible experience for the city of Tempe. I've served on the Tempe Community Council, where you're charged with finding funding for human services, right? Matching people with need to those that are able to support them and help them. That's been incredible. I recently joined the Tempe Women's Club, which is a great group of women, and they are just here to help. And I'm learning more about them. Tempe Sister Cities. I am the current co-country director for Zhenjiang, China, which, what a dedicated group of volunteers. I serve on their board as a co-director, and you meet people with varied interest in our community, but what's universal is everyone wants to help. Everyone wants to make our community better. We love Tempe so much, and living here, we're proud to live here, and we want other people to like it also, or love it as much as we do. If you don't live here, great, but we want you to love visiting here, right?
And that's what, for people that don't know what Sister Cities is,
right.
It's when, you can explain it.
Well, Tempe Sister Cities is an exchange, and primarily a student exchange with the matched sister cities around the world. And we do education exchanges also of teachers.
Oh, okay.
But at the core of it, what it was intended to do was it's diplomacy. One person, one at a time. Everyone's a diplomat. Everyone is an ambassador. And that's how you get to know people, and that's how you build relationships and you build bridges. And I love that philosophy. I think that's the way to do it. In one of my roles at ASU, I worked in international admissions. So I traveled around the world talking about ASU. I spent a great deal of time in China working with students and families that were interested in coming to the US, coming specifically to Arizona, specifically to Tempe, or one of our other campuses, right? The other ASU campuses. But it of course, I spent a lot of time on airplanes thinking about what I would say. Why come to the US? Why come to Arizona? Why come to ASU? And so I've had to reflect a lot on our community, not just the university, but who surrounds us and what will your experience be? And so I've grown to appreciate it because I've studied our community from different angles, because I've had to represent us to people who may never have been here before.
Well, and that's a great answer to one of our questions is how has your travels around the world influenced how you think about Tempe? And you, of all people, have had a chance to think about that and share that with so many people, more than the average person probably.
I've been fortunate enough to travel to many great cities in the world. There are still many more to go. But I love home. I love home. I love the familiarity, but also the friendliness and just the people. It always comes back to that.
Did you want to talk about Tempe leadership a little bit?
I love
For
Tempe
those
leadership.
people that
Yes.
don't know what it is.
Tempe Leadership is a professional development program that's sponsored by the Tempe Chamber of Commerce, and it's run by volunteers, alumni, people who have gone through the program, but it's a professional development program that exposes you to everything Tempe. So it could range from the topic of education. You meet with the superintendents of all of the elementary and high school district, right? And you do site visits, you learn about, it's the background of it. How are leaders making decisions in education? We have Public Safety Day. What is it like to wear the turnout gear and go into a building to search or climb a 5-story ladder or hold the fire hose with the pressure of it? What's the training on that? With PD, what do they have to do? One very significant experience was when on my Public Safety Day with the police was going through their mock training. Also, you meet with mayor and council on Government Day. You have arts and entertainment. You have an ASU day. Hey, here's this big community partner. What happens here? And they get a behind the scenes conversation. It's not simply a tour of anything, it's the conversation. And the program has great credibility. It's been in existence for well over 30 some years. And I was in class 22, which you may have heard of because it's the best class ever. So people know what the program's about and are willing to open the doors, the back doors to everyone so that you learn about whatever you're studying that day.
And then it feels like a lot of people that go through it stay involved. Like you said, they volunteer and continue to help support the program. Am I correct that every class has a project?
Yes.
So what was your class's project?
Yes. So every class also has to choose a project that will benefit the community. And it can be something as simple as going and reading with students or whatever it is. But these are mostly type A people, so they want to be competitive with the other classes. So it could involve huge fundraising, but it doesn't have to. It just needs to benefit the community. There have been great projects. Shower Power was not my class, but one of my favorite projects. There have been backpack projects for schools and elementary schools. Our project was to build a coin, art piece. And it was based on the Plinko game so that people would be engaged as they put the money in.
Ah, interesting. It's been fun to hear about a lot of your experiences and work experiences and growing up here. What would you say is your greatest accomplishment career-wise?
Helping people.
Mm-hmm.
It's been the most rewarding. I don't know if it's, at the end of my story, that's for all of you to decide if that was a great accomplishment. But I think the ability to help students and families find their way through whatever process they needed help with to realize their dream, to me, that's my personal favorite role.
Has faith or spirituality played a role
Sure.
in your life? And do you want to expand on that?
I think it becomes a personal guidepost for you, however one chooses. But absolutely, my faith and my spirituality is a central part of my core, and I always let people know it's right. You have one, however you choose to acknowledge it, whatever you call it, whether it is a religiously based one or not. You have your guideposts, so be aware of those and have some guideposts. Decide as you grow and develop as a person what they are.
Um, do you have some favorite memories of your neighborhood growing up, or events that you have gone to in Tempe that you could share?
Sure. Growing up in my neighborhood on Beldamar, all the kids played together. It was and what was really fun, and remember, my parents were always very busy, so they didn't have a lot of leisure time. But there were evenings where all the parents, and I'm going to name them because they should be named, my parents, Alan and Lillian, would get together with Yvonne, and holy cow, I just blanked on his name, the Mullins next door, and then the Longs, Lola usually was there, and so they'd sit in their lawn chairs and we would run around in the street and play, whatever it was, right? We hung out, and it was neat to have the parents just being there. Everyone was busy, everyone worked. It was middle class, so leisure time was special.
Yeah. Um, and it is fun to name the neighbors and the people you
Yeah.
remember. I'm always impressed with people that can remember their neighbors, and so it's fun to hear their names, and a lot of people that will watch this in the future will know some of the people that you mentioned. So it is fun.
Oh, I'm just feeling horrible right now. Mr. Mullen. I'm forgetting his first. Well, I called him Mr. Mullen,
Yeah.
so I didn't really call him by his first name. But neighbors, Mitch and Tammy, and then the Longs. It was Leonce, Lamont, and holy cow, how did she and I are just Facebook friends. But the Longs, David Reynolds down the street, right? Yeah.
It is funny when you mention people, Mr. or Mrs. When you said Larry Campbell, for years I called him Mr. Campbell.
Right.
It was years before I knew his first name. So.
Well, when I went back to graduating, working in admissions, and going back to Corona, one of my math teachers, not Mr. Bristol, but Miss Steinmetz, was now working in the guidance office, and I went in, and you didn't call adults by their first name. That's how I was raised. And so it was, oh, Miss Steinmetz. And she finally said, my first name is not a curse word, and you can call me Sarah now. And so it became sort of a little funny thing when I would go in and immediately and loudly, hello, Sarah, how are you doing? Right? And Gail Fisher, it took me a bit to call her Gail.
I had a similar with Mr. Denton, or see, there you go.
Yeah.
Jim Denton, because he was Mr. Denton, and when my kids were grown and he was the principal, and he said something similar, you can call me Jim, and I'm thinking, okay, but you're Mr. Denton.
Right. Oh, that's great, Mr. Denton. That's nice.
One of the questions we ask, and you've given so many examples, so if you've already answered it, that's okay, but I want to give you a chance. In what ways do you feel connected to the community of Tempe? Did we leave anything out of you just have so many connections between the neighborhoods and people you grew up with, and the schools, and your work, and your parents, and is there anything that we left out as far as connections to the city?
I think, no, I don't think so. It's been pretty comprehensive, but in order to be connected, you have to be willing to be connected and to plug in, right? To get involved and to take that step. So if I were to give advice to any new residents seeing this or new people to our community, it's get involved. It's what we encourage here, and there are so many things to do. And like I said, my why of why I'm running now is because I had the opportunity to get involved, and I think it's important to continue that and to make sure that our community continues to encourage that we're inclusive.
Have you noticed attitudes towards cultural diversity changing over the years?
I think with time, I think that's just a matter of educating people, that and people learning how to understand other people that may look different from them, speak differently, whatever. I shouldn't say whatever.
Is there anything that you're specifically proud of when it comes to Tempe?
The people?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the people. Let me think for 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the example, right? When the appointment, the opportunity to be appointed came up, 50 people stepped up. People in Tempe are supportive of one another by and large. Let me think through that. The question is, what am I proud of?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What makes me proud about Tempe? Certainly I've overshared the people, right? But it's the cultural norm that we've created to be inclusive. And that takes work. Like any family tradition, if you don't continue to do it and support it, it goes away. Well, consistent has been this feeling of, yes, Tempe wants to continue to grow and be a relevant and dynamic city, and we want people to get involved. So we've retained that feeling, and it makes me proud to be from here.
Is there something that you want people to remember? People will watch this forever, you know.
Oh, no.
And so is there something that you want people to remember you for, or be remembered for?
I don't know how to answer that one.
It's a hard question, and sometimes I feel bad asking it because you're put on the spot of, you know, what would you like to be remembered for? And it's a tough question.
If I had a hope for that of how to be remembered, would be to be someone that exemplified that spirit of Tempe, that enthusiasm about, oh, you're from Tempe, or you just moved to Tempe? Well, let me tell you, here are some great spots in Tempe. Here's where we go to do this, and you need to get involved in, right, the Mill Avenue Arts, and you need to go do this, and the boat parade, and the whatever. I would hope to be remembered as one of Tempe's biggest cheerleaders. That's what I would hope.
That's awesome. Is there anything related to your life, your work, neighborhoods, colleagues, friends, other experiences in Tempe that we've left out, or you'd like to share, or you'd like to mention?
No, I want to mention all the names, but I can't get everyone's name here. But there are some incredible people doing incredible work as volunteers.
Oh.
You mentioned neighbors. You know, there are people who work to really help their neighborhoods in whatever way. In North Tempe, Arlene Justice just won an award for her conservation work. there's been a lot of work in that, and people care, and they care about their neighbors. And we have people in South Tempe working, putting together, right, South Tempe Little League and different events, and Central Tempe. I've had the opportunity to visit many neighborhoods recently, and consistent is the leadership that exists, the organic leadership that exists to help your neighbors, and
that's nice.
that's been wonderful to see.
Yeah, and that's wonderful to hear about, because it just adds another layer to what makes Tempe
Yeah.
great. We usually open it up for other people to ask questions. Sometimes
Okay.
they're prompted by things you've said, so Dwayne?
I have two questions. This is Dwayne Roan asking this question. So, if people don't know how to get involved, what advice do you have for them?
Well, one program, Tempe Leadership, is a great one. If you're someone who wants to get involved, I will tell you that everyone else that's usually involved, that participates in the leadership program, are those that want to get involved. You find your people in that program, but it's also going to the City of Tempe site, and there's an application to apply to be placed on one of the boards or commissions, and there are descriptions of all of the different boards and commissions.
And
Oh wait, may I add to that? We have several great nonprofits that could use some help in leadership in Tempe, whether it's TCAA or Neighbors Helping Neighbors. There are some great projects and causes, and for whatever your interest.
And TCAA stands for?
Tempe Community Action Agency.
Perfect, yeah.
They're really a great organization in Tempe.
and how have you've been associated with the ASU for a long,
Sure.
long time. How would you describe the changes that have occurred to ASU during your years with ASU?
The changes? Well, when I travel to China, I don't really have to explain who Arizona State University is, and that, the way they select colleges in China is very different from the US. And it took a lot of work for ASU to gain the level of significance and relevance and credibility that ASU now enjoys as a solid academic institution. I think that's really important.
Thank you.
Hi.
Michaela Keeney. My question is about, you said you were appointed in May 2019, is that right?
Yes.
And then the world changed in March 2020 and you were still on the council.
Right.
Can you share what that was like? Because the world changed in lots of ways. We all of a sudden always had Zoom meetings, and I'm sure there were many other things. Were there things that you got to see behind the scenes that helped people cope, and how did people cope in those times?
Oh, yes. So the world changed in March of 2020. In fact, I flew home from DC on March 11th. And that was about when I was sent home to work from home. And I was on city council at that time. And, we no longer had in-person meetings. It was fascinating. I will say that one project that stands out to me about, well, how did people react and what did we do? It's interesting. A partnership between Arizona State University and the City of Tempe, the wastewater project. We had early on, we didn't have testing that was readily available. Not many people had access to it. So you lived absolutely in a cloud of uncertainty. We knew there was something that we had to protect ourselves from, but we knew very little, and it was day by day. We would gain knowledge every day, right? And I think one of the great partnerships, and this is something that some people take for granted, the partnership between the City of Tempe and Arizona State University. the benefits of that became very evident to me, because we began testing wastewater in quadrants in the city, and you could tell where there were high levels of COVID. And that was important to know, because our first responders could prepare, our hospitals could prepare, right, to react to whatever in a changing landscape. Then also, now we're in a period of, well, there's more testing, but there are variants, and whether we have vaccinated or unvaccinated people, that testing becomes relevant now, because, well, where are the variants? Where do we need to address the access to vaccinations or testing or whatever it may be? But it helped provide some guideposts, some data to help us try to figure it out. I think we've all been in the state of, we don't know what's happening. There was so much uncertainty. I think that may be the shortest answer to your direct question. What was it like? There was so much uncertainty, but people tried to, leadership, city leadership, community leadership, tried to provide as much guidance and calm as they could. What else could you do? You can't run around and throw your hands in the air and panic, and that doesn't help. We all had those moments, right? Because we didn't know what to expect. But we had to rely on one another. We had to trust. We still need to trust.
Any other questions?
Nothing?
Well, thank you so much. It's been enlightening and interesting, and thank you so much for your time, and it'll be fun for posterity for people to see this as well.
Thank you for the invitation to participate. This is incredible. This is an incredible project. Thank you for the idea. Thank you for doing it, for executing. Thank you for reconnecting with me so I could be here. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's great.
You'll edit out all the ums. And